Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. It's always good afternoon somewhere, good morning somewhere, and also, I guess, noon somewhere. Welcome back to another exciting interview of Conversations with Rudy Rivera. I'm real thrilled to have as my guest Michael Strunck. Michael is an author, business executive who wrote the book Construyamos un mundo al revés. Let's build an upside down world. He tells the story of a fictional character, Carlos Martinez, an ordinary accountant who shares his story from life to death. So Carlos's life is similar to, many others, but for the most part, I think we can each identify with Carlos. I read your book, Michael, and I was glued to it. I found it fascinating because so many of your opinions also happen to be mine. I think we coincide in a number of those things. But tell us a little bit about what you really do for a living and what inspired you to write the book, and then we'll get into what the book's about.
Well, hello, Rudy. It's really a pleasure to be here with you and to share this moment with you and our audience. I work as in a pharmaceutical company. It's our family business. I work at the marketing and sales department. I'm already working at the pharmaceutical company over 14 years, so it's my first and my only job till now. And I've been working with, elaborating strategies for our products and working with the sales team in order to get to the results, to the desired results. And it has been like a really, really nice experience because in a family business, you have to do a little bit of everything. I did my studies in international business and with a major in marketing, but now I do a little bit of human resources. Now I do a little bit of accounting, a little bit of finance, and that's the great thing about having a family business because you can get a perspective of different areas, and that's for me like enriching. Um,
Well, you have to do everything. I mean, when it's a family business, you got to do everything. Sometimes if you have to mop the floors, you got to mop the floors, right? Because
that's
it's
true. That's
a
true.
family
Well,
business.
I have a brother and a sister. My brother and my sister are working at the company as well. My brother is the CEO of the company, and my sister is in business intelligence. And my father is the president of the company, but he's not like in the operating area anymore. He's just looking at the results. So um, it has been like a great experience to work with my brother and my sister because the first question everyone asks is, don't you fight with your brother? Don't you fight with your sister? Don't you discuss all the time? And I think we we've managed to lead the company responsibly, and every one of us knows uh, his role to play in the company, and that's why I think uh, we work as a synergic team, and everything flows perfectly. And I have to be grateful with my brother and my sister and my dad because it has been a great experience to lead the company and to work 14 years and see how we were growing, how we are growing, and how we were surviving to these difficult phases of business life, you know. Why did I or what
Did
did
you write the
what
book?
yeah,
Yeah.
why did write the book? Well, all my life I have been talking to a lot of people. For my friends, I was like that friend uh, that you want to talk to, that he hears your stories and he gives you good advice. And I always wanted to help people, to share my experience, to give them advice from my heart in order to see them having a better life, or just resolving problems in their lives. And during my professional experience, it was the same. All the people came to me, talked about their problems, and I realized that most of the people have the same issues, have the same problems, and they ask the same questions. And the main question is, how can I be happy? And I answered this question, and when I was young, when I was 8, 10 years old, I answered the question, how can I be happy? And my answer is by enjoying life, by accepting life as it is, and enjoying every moment of your life. Of course, um, enjoying what you already have while you work on what you want. But most of the times, we just focus on what we want or what is missing instead of seeing and living what you already have. And that's
That,
why I wanted to write a book, in order to get my message to more people, not only my friends and my family, but I have to say they were the first ones to read my book, and it was also like a great experience to get the feedback of my father, of my mother, because they didn't imagine that one of their sons would write a book, and more about happiness, and that was like a really nice experience, and that's the aim of or purpose of the book, just giving a positive message about happiness and about purpose of life and success.
well, there's a great song from Sheryl Crow, some great lyrics, It's not, having what you want, it's wanting what you have. And that seems to be a theme that resonates throughout your book. But one question I have for you, Michael, is why did you write it from the personal view of a fictional character rather than just saying, this is Michael, these are my thoughts on being happy, this is based on my life's experiences? Could you explain why you decided you're not the only author that's done that? Most, I would consider your book a self-help book. It's an enlightening book. It's a book that can help illuminate certain things in your life, but you chose to write it from a fictional character. Why is that?
And it's funny because for a long time I already had like the topics I wanted to write about, but I didn't know how to do it. I didn't want to be like a normal um, book about happiness or about coaching or whatever. I wanted to be different, and that's why I started to write the book. And it was like too theoretical for me. So story behind everything. So the people can see themselves in this person. And yeah, that's why I created this character of it. It could be, or it could have been a possibility that the character name is Michael, or that the character name is Rudy, because most of us have the same questions and the same analysis that Carlos Martinez is having in the book. But yeah, he is in a special situation, he's battling for between death and life, and trying to survive. And personally, I till now I was not in this situation, and that's why maybe I thought um, another character or a fictional character would be best.
I actually like the idea. I think it's a great idea because it gives you more poetic license to create the events in this character that maybe aren't relevant in your life, but you have certain thoughts on. I mean, obviously, you're not dying. Carlos Martinez, is dying, right? And it's the reason of his, his accident or his illness that he's saying, oh, let me take a look at my life. And he starts to almost go from the very beginning, all the way to the end, taking, several aspects to it. Um, but one of the things I noticed is Carlos, who's an accountant, never really liked being an accountant. That's what his father wanted him to do. And so he did it because that's what he thought it should be, but he's never really happy as an accountant. And that's a persistent problem when kids, say the father says, like, you're happy, for example, that you're in the family business, you like it. But you could easily say, no, I don't want to be in the pharmaceutical industry. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a gardener, whatever. But I see that as a common issue when people are forced into a profession they don't want because their parents, their friends, they think they will be happier because they know better.
Hmm. Yeah, that's true. And that's one of the first problems why many people don't find this way to happiness, because they give all their best to make others happy. They give everything to make others happy. And they give also their happiness. They prefer to be unhappy so other people are happy. And that's what happens to Carlos in a lot of situations, with his parents, with his father. And the family tradition was that every man in the family was an accountant, and that's why he didn't want to let down his father. He didn't want uh, to create unhappiness for his father. And with the sports as well, everyone was playing soccer, but he
He didn't like
liked another
soccer. Yeah.
he liked another sport, but he was forced to play soccer because that was the sport that every boy was playing. Um, and we do in our own lives, we do a lot of things that doesn't make us happy, only to make others happy or only to be accepted. And that is one main problem because if you want to be happy, the first thing you have to do things that make you happy and not start doing things that make others happy or just for acceptance.
But that's $1 million question, Michael, is what makes you happy? You have to define that first. And in
Of
Carlos's case,
course,
it wasn't being an accountant, you
of
know.
course, the definition of happiness is a personal answer. Happiness means something special for me, and it can be totally different for you.
I think it's different for everybody. It's different for everybody because we look at something and we think, well, I think you would be happy doing this, but you can't get inside their head and know what really makes them happy. You just think from, looking, at their situation, but you're not in their head. Okay. Um,
Hmm.
but I think one of the things you touched on, which is very important, is trying to please other people and get them to like you. And that's a common problem. My mother used to say, I give on the seat. What are they going to say? And I used to say, oh, no, 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 no. What are they going to say? Like, make sure your clothes are clean because if you get hit by a car and you got to go to the hospital and they're going to say, oh my God, your clothes are dirty. What kind of mother does he have? I said, Mom, well, if I'm in the hospital, I would hope that they're more than worried about my underwear, my shorts, and take care of me and not, I don't think that they're criticizing you, so I think we often place too much value on what other people think. Now that has some degrees, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a funny example, but it's true. It's true. The sad thing is it's true, you know. And here in Latin America, it's terrible, You you do everything to get accepted, and you dress like everyone dresses because it's written in stone, but you you don't live up your life in base of your essence or your authenticity. You just live the life others want you to live. And
Well, and also I think they're afraid to be judged.
of course,
And I say, so what? Let them judge you. As somebody, I remember I used to work as a janitor at a school, and there was a lady there who was a cleaning lady. This is when I was in high school. And she said, somebody said something to her. She says, "Do you pay my bills?" I said, "No." "Well, then shut up. I don't need your opinion, you know. And and so people can opine about whether they like you or not, but unless they're even if they're supporting you, you know, what right do they have to do it? And I think it's not wise for you to give in just so they don't think something
yeah, the Rudy, the best person who knows what makes you happy
is you.
is you.
Mhm. Exactly. Oops, I think Michael, I think you froze.
One moment.
Yeah, okay, you're back on. Okay.
I'm
Okay.
back. Okay.
But the thing about that, Michael, is that
I will move to another spot. I'm sorry, Rudy. So we don't have any problems, okay?
okay. Well, while you're moving, I think the people who are going to judge you are people that you're not going to be with them for the rest of your lives. Because people, are you there? Hmm?
Okay.
Okay.
Now it's
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, the people who judge you are not necessarily people that are going to be involved in your life the whole time. One of the things I've always told my kids is that friends are geographical, they're situational, depending where you are in time. Friends from high school are not going to be your friends down the road. So imagine going
Mhm.
your whole life trying to please every group of people. That's that's why I think you become miserable, right?
Yes, yes, that's true. And and a lot of people, they don't want you to get better, you know. They say you're your friends. They say they want to support you, but in reality, they just want you to stay where you are.
Because misery
And
loves company. Misery loves company, right?
yes, that's true. And as I say to a lot of people is you're interesting when you're having problems, when your life is more miserable than the other lives, you know. Once you become successful or once you get start to build up your life, you're not interesting anymore, and people will get away from you.
But here's what I think happens though. I think sometimes we're not necessarily afraid of failure because we already know failure. We're there. Okay. I mean, I was raised a kid on welfare, and the logical step for me was going to be go work at the steel plant. And friends were saying, "Why did you go to college? Because you can get a job at the steel plant, you can pay for education." I mean, you know the arguments, okay?
Mhm.
I'm sure in Ecuador they're similar, like they were here. But I think sometimes the people who aren't happy are also afraid of success because when you become successful, you go into a different dimension, which means in most cases you end up giving up all a number of the friends and relationships you've had before. And then you go in and have to make some. And that's scary for some people
Yes, the obviously the first steps towards success are difficult because everyone will say, no, that's not the way. You're going the wrong way. They're talking from their perspective or of reality. And going against that is difficult, when your parents, when your family, when people who love you say you're going the wrong way, is it is hard to say, no, okay, thank you for your advice, but I will still go that way. But once you pass this first phase of building your life and building your successful lifestyle or happy lifestyle, it becomes easier to go further, Just this first part of getting apart from the rest or from the society or what how you I don't know how we can say it, is battling with this emotion, which is fear.
Exactly. And it's okay to be afraid. It's really okay to be afraid. But that brings me to chapter 4 of your book, where you talk about toxic relationships. And you break it down from your mother and father to your spouse to your friends, Um, and I found that part of your book the most fascinating because I think toxic relationships are something that everyone can identify with. Your boss may not want you to get ahead. People may be jealous. They don't want you to get ahead, or they don't want you to be happy because they want to mold you in their image in some ways.
Mhm, mhm,
Like your parents want you to do what they think is best for you, and therefore they don't let you enjoy the happiness. And what you say in your book, which is very profound, is the best relationship with your parents is one where you can communicate, share differences, and then they say, fine, my son, go do what makes you happy, rather than saying, no, 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 don't do that, don't do that, and or it's not good, or you're not going to be happy. And the big question is, what if you fail?
mhm.
You know,
Yeah, relationships are an important part of our lives. They made like some time ago, like 1 year ago, I saw a video where they asked people who were like 70 or 80 years old, and they asked them, what would you do different if you could go back in time and change something? And everyone, or 90% of the people said, I would focus less in money and I would focus more on building relationships. Because today I'm alone. I have money, but I don't know with whom I can spend it. And relationships definitely are empowering, and they are important in finding happiness in your life. But what makes the difference between a toxic relationship and an empowering relationship is putting the right limits.
putting
When
the
a
right,
relation
yeah, putting the right limits on people.
when
Did you ever have this, the crazy uncle or the crazy sister who's always telling, well, no, you should do this. No, 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 don't do that. The brother or whatever, I know what's better, what's best for you, right? And you
yeah.
and you say, okay, stop. Okay. I'm going to live my life. And a lot of times people don't have the courage to say that because they go back to, they don't want to offend, they don't want to be a fight. You're better off having that fight to begin with. And then hopefully, if the relationship can't be saved, then it can't be saved. There's no point in saving
Mhm.
a relationship that can't, right?
Yes, and most of the things that are provoking unhappiness in your life depends on your decisions and on your actions. I know putting limits, I don't know, in the relationship with your mother or with your father or with a close person, with your husband, with your wife, it can be difficult, but it's necessary. It's necessary because toxic relationships are can destroy your life, and it is difficult to get out of these toxic relationships, because if you let them into your house, they don't go they don't go away anymore.
It's like the lazy brother that lives in your basement and he won't move. You know what I'm saying? Well, what you talk about in your book is a relationship between, parents and children. It's, provide guidance and be there for support. That's it. Not
Mhm.
provide mandates, right? And then the relationship with the spouse is to support each other in the sense to make sure what the other person, it's think about what the other person wants as opposed to exclusively what you want, right? And then you mentioned the work relationship too, which is a little bit more difficult because, explain why that one's more difficult.
First, the relationship with your sons, I think, and today, I think it's getting more and more empowering because you have to respect the opinions of your sons, of your daughters. I know maybe they don't have the experience you have, but they have a point of view, and it is important to respect this point of view. And once you respect their point of view and you have a clear communication and a healthy communication, obviously the confidence of your daughter and your son towards you as a parent will be much better, and the relationship will be much better. One of the problems, and I can relate when I was younger. Uh, One of the things we didn't like is that our parents didn't value our opinion. They said it has to be done that way, and it's not no other way. And that's why many relationships got like broken.
Well, what do you,
And
because you're young, you have no life experiences.
yeah, and that's hurtful for a child. That's hurtful for a child. And with your spouse, I think, okay, you're a family now, you're a couple, but at the end of the day, you're still individuals, and
Right?
you have to respect this limit of individual, you know. And I think that's the clear the point to have like a successful relationship with your spouse. Enjoy the life as a couple, but also enjoy the life as an individual, because you you don't um, stop being an individual once you get married or something like that. And at work, oof, the relationships are more difficult because there are other interests in play. Um,
There's jealousies there, you getting ahead, or, there are people who don't want you to talk to the manager. They want to take every idea as theirs. Yeah, I mean, those relationships are, extremely toxic, but they're the ones that also can cause you to lose your job.
yeah, and everyone is pulling to their side, because there's more in we say in Spanish, está mucho más en juego. I don't know if I can say it in English.
It's
There's more,
very much in play.
yeah, very much in play. And you will do everything to to pull the things to your side. And that's like that makes it difficult to build honest relationships at work, because there will be always like a second um reason, or um I don't know, people will try to make you fall down. And but still you still have to build relationships at your work. You can't walk like an individual and say, okay, I won't relate to anybody in my work, because you still need a team. Independently, if you work as an accountant, as a marketing manager or human resources or whatever, you need a team and you need to work with people, and you have to relate and speak up to people. So it's still important to try to build those relationships.
Well, it all focuses on relationships, which means that you have to be cognizant of those relationships. You have to work to develop those relationships. You can't just be in a corner and expect to keep your job for 30 years without interacting with your people. The most successful groups I find in companies are people who work together. Okay. And the least successful groups are where everyone's backstabbing each other. Like where, give your coworker credit. Hey, you know what? This was Michael's idea and it was a great idea. And we the team ran with it. What does that mean?
Hmm.
That Michael's going to have more ideas down the road. He's vested because it's not necessarily about the money, it's about the recognition. But I think the work relationships are somewhat more difficult because I think they're a little bit more difficult to control. With
Hmm.
your spouse, with your parents, you can have heart to heart, but you're talking with coworkers with whom you may not have a personal connection with. So that's, I think that's, what makes it more difficult. And of course, one more point about chapter 4 is you talk about your spiritual connection, right? And why, that's important too to have that connection and be happy with that.
Yeah, the spiritual connection is very important in our lives because faith is important. If you don't have faith, you don't have this motivation or this inspiration to go further, to give your best effort. Um, but most of the times, and in the book, you will find a lot of my own experiences. Uh, when I was young, when I went to church, um, the priest said everything was about fear. Everything was about if you do something wrong, you will go to hell. If you say these words, you will go to hell. And for me, this was not empowering at all. For me, it was limiting because I said, okay, I don't understand why his speech is not about what you will get if you're a great person. What you will get if you do things right.
It's about
And I
damnation. It was about damnation. That it's not that you need to have a relationship with God, but it's you better be afraid of God because if you don't do what he says, that's the that's that people get. It's amazing how that messes with people's minds. Okay, and like I'm a Christian, I'm a believer. Okay, what I don't necessarily believe so much is religion. That they
Mhm.
turn into something. So yeah, and that relationship is very important. But I think you have to feel comfortable, with that relationship you're going to have with whatever deity, it is, but you also have to have some temperance with it.
Mhm.
You have to have some temperance with it because is this, I remember in the Bible, I think it was a lawyer who asked God, what are the most important commandments in the world? There's 7 lawyers in the Bible. Okay. I looked it up one day, because they always said lawyers are going to burn in hell. But and the best commandments are love God and love your neighbor. That's really when you look at it, that covers everything, right?
Yeah, you know, uh, the Bible is a book
Book of
which
stories.
can be interpreted in different ways. But I think the only way that empowers is when you talk about love.
Yeah. And loving whatever your God, Allah, loving your neighbor. That's when you, I think, have a perfect spiritual relationship. That's the I think that's the secret to it. I want to jump a little bit to chapter 7, which is enfoque pasado, presente, futuro. And I notice that people often spend too much time focusing on the past, on what didn't happen, what could have happened. If she would have said yes and gone to the prom with me, we would have been married and been happily ever after, you know? And then I think it's important to worry about the present, because that's when you have to take action. But to spend too much time worrying about the future, it takes away. There's an expression that says tomorrow never comes, but today is always here.
Hmm. Yeah, that's true, Rudy. You know, what happened, you're not able to change anymore, but you can learn from it. I always say, if you want to look back, just look back to learn,
Mhm.
to do today better things, or try to be a better person, learning from the things that happened in the past. Um, this problem of if if I could, if I had done this, or if I had said this, it's only focusing on things that are not
Can't change.
real and you can't change and that will not happen anymore. So you're spending your time focusing on things that are irrelevant in your present.
You cannot change them. And so you go back to learn, but not to regret.
Exactly. Exactly. Some people, and I talk about victimism as well, and the victim goes always back to what happened in order to um, say, that's why I cannot be happy today. That's why I'm suffering today because of all the things that happened in the past. So they're giving the wrong meaning to the things that happened in the past, you know. Everyone has like good things, good experiences, and bad experiences in their life, but it depends on the meaning you give to those things that occur in your life. And the future is important as well. You have to have a vision. You have to know where you want to be tomorrow, but
But you
you
have to
won't get you,
but you have to plan today for the future.
exactly. You won't get there if you sit in your couch today and do nothing in favor that this future happens, you know.
You call it victimization, but I call it the self-fulfilling prophecy. And,
Hmm.
and that brings negative victimization, and the self-fulfilling prophecy brings negative thoughts. And negative thoughts bring negative actions. So if you say, oh, I can't do this, because I have two kids, and I got to take care of them, so I can't, follow my dream or whatever. But at the same time, you could look at it and say, well, I've got two kids. I want to follow my dreams. How do I do it? What's the best way to do it? A colleague of mine who worked for a big company as international counsel, she started her job with a huge motor company as a paralegal. She had a husband, she had two kids. She graduated number one in her class, with all those obstacles. So I think rather than saying I can't because, or I've got all these obstacles, you just think, how do I get rid of these obstacles and what can I do and take one step forward? Then one step turns into a second step. That's the thing.
Yeah, most of the people are only focused on finding the reasons to uh, justify their failure. Can I
Right, that's
justify
right.
their failure? So they don't even do anything to be successful. They just are finding the reasons to say, "Oh, I didn't get there because of that. I am not successful because of that." And the problem is those reasons they find why they are not successful today, or why they experience failure in the past, they become beliefs because they are repeating those reasons one day over the other, and in one moment your mind says, okay, what you're saying is true. What you're saying is true, and it becomes a belief. And once it's a belief, it's limit it will limit your life
But Michael,
tremendously.
I think it becomes more than just a belief. I think it becomes a fact.
Yeah, of course.
I think, the fact is, you're going to fail. Um, I live by the philosophy. This is why I was fascinated with your book. Okay. For the most part, I really don't care what other people think about me because I can't control that. I can
Hmm.
control how I feel about myself. Okay. Second part of it is I don't believe in perfection. There's no such thing as perfection. And often we hold ourselves back saying, well, if I can't do it perfect, I don't want to do it at all. Okay. And depending on your point of view, the only real perfect person died 2,000 years ago, right? That was Jesus. Okay. But nobody's perfect. We're all sinners, as they would say. We're born with original sin, depending on your religion. But, I think the failure is a good thing because failure can be a lesson. And
Exactly.
that's something that stops you. There's a famous quote from Winston Churchill. It says, failure is not fatal, and success is not final. It is the courage to persevere that matters, right?
Hmm.
So I think people put the wrong emphasis on failure. And when you
Yeah.
look, yeah, somebody like Thomas Edison, who, how many attempts did he make to invent the light bulb? And they said, well, you had all those failures. He said, no, I didn't have all those failures. Those are all things that made me realize it didn't work. So they were successes because I knew what wouldn't work.
Hmm.
And so that's how I try to live my life is just, okay, do the best you can under the circumstances with the facts as you know them. More times than not, you're going to be okay.
Exactly. Rudy, success comes from experience, and experience comes from failure. That's it. If you see a soccer player, the most of uh, the balls he shoots go outside. Only a few go into the goal. And that's life, you will fall down, you will fail in one or another aspect, but you have to learn from it. And those lessons have a great chance to make you or to convert in a better version of you tomorrow.
Well, no, exactly. But I think the attitude towards failure is what needs to change in most people. And if that changes, and you say, well, it didn't work. I remember the president of a company, saying, you know, I get it if you fail. You tried something, it didn't work, and you move on. But what I don't like is you not doing anything.
Hmm. That's true, and you have to feel responsible for your acts as well. If you fail tomorrow, you have to feel responsible for your actions and not say, I failed because it's the fault of the rest of the world. Everybody is going against me. And you have to feel responsible because that's the only way failure uh, will get you to learn from it. But if you don't feel responsible about your acts or your actions, nothing will happen. You will fail once again and you will keep on failing because you are not understanding that it's your responsibility to learn from it and to try new ways to get to a better position in life.
Somebody once said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, and expecting different results. I think, but I think with failure, there are things that can cause failure that are beyond your control. Okay. But still, the attitude you take is, I did my best. Perhaps I
Hmm.
didn't anticipate this. Next time I will. Perhaps you learned something. Maybe you didn't, or maybe you just realized, nah, this isn't for me. I tried it, I don't like it. Uh, but that failure may lead you into something else.
Hmm.
You may decide that you want to be a singer, you want to be a famous salsa singer. And of course, you fail miserably, but you may think, hey, you know what? I'm a good producer.
Hmm.
I can put other people together, or I could be a good manager, you know? You have to constantly reevaluate yourself after a failure.
Yes, of course. And for me, success means, and as you said, giving your maximum effort in every aspect or role in your life. In my case, giving my maximum effort to be a good parent, to be a good father, to be a good son, to be a good marketing manager, to be a good husband, to be a good friend. That's for me success. Because as you said, perfection does not exist, but maximum effort is possible and it's in your hands.
The phrase that comes to mind, Michael, is do your best to be your best.
Great, great phrase.
You know, once you give maximum effort, you know, I work in litigation, you know, and I manage cases that, you know, there are a lot of money and, you know, we could lose a lot of money. And some of my friends say, well, how come you're not nervous? How come you don't have a nervous breakdown? I said, because, you know, we're in the risk business. Okay. You can't win every case, but I can control what I do. If I did everything I possibly could, and I left no stone unturned and I still lose, well, I'm okay. But
Mhm.
if something I didn't do that I should have done, and I don't know why I didn't do it, and that's when you feel bad, you know? So that's
Exactly.
I like the phrase, you know, do your best to be your best because and see the problem is that you have a set of facts at a certain point in time. Okay. If you just let it linger and linger and linger and linger, maybe it'll take care of itself. Maybe, you know, the facts will change and then you have to analyze it all over again. But at least here, make the decision with what you have. And I think
Mhm.
based upon reading your book, the first decision somebody has to make is, okay, what's it going to take to make me happy? What do I want in life? Okay. And then you evaluate all the relationships that you mentioned in your book. You
Mhm.
evaluate them and say, how do they make you happy? You know, that's why chapter, 4 was one of my favorites, okay? Because you're saying these toxic relationships, get rid of them. Okay. Get rid of them. Don't linger on because you're only going to be more miserable. And next thing you know, you're going to look at, down the road, and you're going to say, God, why did I do this for so long?
That's true. That's true, Rudy.
Well, I would like to, we're closing, near the end. If anyone in our audience, our Zoom audience has any questions, feel free to send me a text. Um, but Michael, when I do these interviews, I like to have a takeaway. Okay. And generally I like to have at least three or four. So what are the three or four takeaways from your book? And by the way, the book's in Spanish. Is it in English also?
No, no, it's only in Spanish, but I hope and I will do all my best that we can translate it to English as soon as possible.
Well, to my friends who speak Spanish, his book's available on Amazon Kindle. It's available in hard
Mm.
copy. It's a very easy read. I mean, I read it quickly, and it's a great book. And the other reason I think your book is so effective is because you're telling a story. Like as I read Carlos Martinez's story, I said, I want him to succeed. My God, this poor guy. I want him to do well. He's like a character that's sympathetic, right? But anyway, getting back to the takeaways, what would you think are the three big takeaways from the book that you would tell our listeners?
Um, the first one is that happiness can be a lifestyle and it's a decision that you make every day. Happiness is an emotion, but it's also an attitude towards life. That would be the first one. The second one is today is the best day and the best opportunity to move on where you want to be. there's no other best opportunity because you don't know what will happen tomorrow. You will not, you don't know what will happen in 2 hours. So if you're searching for something, if you are striving for something special, do something today, at least one small step. But if you want to change your life, today is the only chance you have.
There's a Chinese proverb that says that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step.
That's
And,
true.
and let me just interrupt you quickly on that one. What I think people do is they don't set long-term, short-term goals. So you think, I want to be a millionaire. Well, that's pretty broad, right? But you can say for today, gee, I want to make $20,000 more than I made last year. That's something you can accomplish, right?
Hmm.
Short of buying a lottery ticket and winning, but that's not going to happen. But these goals have to be short-term, reachable goals that'll eventually get you to your longer term goal, right?
Exactly. And one of the most important things, Rudy, is to know how to set goals, you know, because if you say, okay, I want to be a millionaire, everyone wants to be a millionaire, but it's like a so open goal that it will be difficult to get there. And if you
Very
have a
vague.
map,
It's vague. It's very
yeah,
vague.
very vague. You have to set goals which are very detailed. The more detailed your map, the more easy you will get to your destination.
I agree. I agree. You have to have a plan. It's got to have short-term goals. And the short-term goals are good because they give you a sense of accomplishment and they motivate you for other goals, right? You think, oh my God,
Exactly.
I can do this. I remember trying my first jury trial. And I was trying it against a lawyer who was extremely experienced, been practicing 25 years. There's me going in my first jury trial, and I won. I thought, holy cow. And well, maybe I can do this. And so that little thing kind of gave me confidence to say, well, I can try another case. I can try another case, or I can do something else. It's just, it leads to short-term satisfaction, but long-term motivation.
Hmm. That's true, Rudy. And well, getting to our third point from my book, I think it's about relationships because walking alone through life is hard. When you fall down, nobody will be there to get you up, to give you his hand, and you have to decide with whom you want to walk through your life. And obviously, those relationships have to empower your life, have to help you to get to happiness, to success, and have to share your vision. They need to know where you want to go. And that I think that's really important because we don't know the importance of relationship till we're alone in this world.
Right.
So don't get there because um, it's not it's not uh, it's not I don't know how to say it. No vale la pena. It's
Yeah.
not worth it. It's not worth it.
So
Uh,
not worth it.
yeah. So
We
and the
have
last
Go
sorry.
ahead. No, continue. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, and the last thing is being grateful. What I said at the beginning. No, enjoy what you already have while you work on what you want, and be grateful of the great things you have. Most of the time, we focus only on the negative things of our job, on the negative things of our wife, on the negative things of our car, of our everything, you know. But every relationship, every material thing and your profession has also positive things.
Mhm.
So start focusing on the positive things, take the best out of every relationship. You have to accept that nobody is perfect and nothing is perfect. So focus on the positive things and be grateful on the beauties that you already have surrounding you.
We have two questions. Okay. One of them, which is Michael says that happiness is not about perfection, but about the best effort you can give. My perception on this matter is that most people do not try to do their best, but only what is absolutely necessary. The law of least effort. What do you think about this particular matter?
And that's true, and that's why a lot of people are not happy in their lives. I call it, do you say mediocrity, mediocridad? Mediocridad, how do you say it in English?
I say what now? Dímelo en español.
Medi medio mediocridad,
Mediocrity.
mediocrity.
Mhm.
This law of the minimum effort will simply get you to mediocrity, to just surviving. And life is not about surviving. It's about living up your life at the maximum level.
It's
And with
about
this
thriving. It's about thriving.
exactly. And this minimum effort will only keep you like floating
Mhm.
uh, during all your life, but nothing really awesome will happen in your life. And I think this law of minimum effort is the first step to failure and constant failure.
I agree. The next question is the title of your book makes me think deeply. In the face of the various sad and disappointing stories of our time, I tend to say our world is upside down. But for you, the ideal world is the upside down one. Can you explain it?
Yes, I didn't have the title of the book till I finished writing the book. And I decided to put it that way because if you see the news today, every everyone talks about negative things, wars, economic crisis, um, all other negative things that occur in the world. If you talk to somebody in the street or some friends, they also are pessimists and are negative about the future. They are just criticizing what everything happens. There's no, I feel there's no a positive feeling about the world and the future of the world. And that's why I want to build an upside world where we start to be optimistic about our planet, about our world, and about our lives. And that's why I want to turn the world upside down.
Well, I think there's so much negativity that's present in the world as it is right side up that turning it upside down may bring people some happiness and have them take a different perspective. Well, we're up to the hour, Mike. I want to thank my LinkedIn audience for joining us. It's been a great conversation. Thank my Zoom audience for being here and listening to this great conversation.